Yeah.
Getting back to Africa, what would you say, and you already alluded to some, but what would you say are Africa's greatest contributions to mankind?
Right. Um, when it comes to so many things that humans do, such as the funeral and the different things that happen in a funeral, where the body is put in a casket and then is then wheeled along, and there's a procession. The ancient Egyptians did that. The ancient Sudanese did that. There's so many things that we can point to. But let's talk about some of the highlights. Some of the greatest domestic architecture in Africa was built by a Bantu speaking people called the Swahilis. And all the way along the East African coasts, from Somalia down through Kenya, down through Tanzania, down through Mozambique, some of the grandest houses. So, for example, people watching this, there is the famous Black British supermodel, Naomi Campbell, and she owns a mansion in Kenya that is built in a semi-Swahili style. What they did was make it half Swahili and half some other ancient Kenyan tradition. Google it and you'll be amazed. And it's a style of architecture that rich Black people all over the world can aspire to, and it still looks good, right? So that's one example of the kind of thing. I'm talking about a civilization that had bathrooms, a civilization that had toilets. I visited the East.
Indoor
Absolutely,
plumbing. Yes.
absolutely.
Go ahead. I'm
Uh,
sorry.
yeah, and people need to know this. Houses of 3, 4, and 5 stories, absolutely exquisite. And most people don't know that Black people still live in those places. Do you see? Then you've got other greatness in terms of industrial production. The people of what is today Zimbabwe in medieval times are believed to have dug gold mines to the depth of 150 feet. And archaeologists between 1902 and 1904 estimate that in the medieval period, those Africans shifted 43.25 million tons of ore.
My goodness.
Right, just let that sink in, you right?
Oh,
Yeah. And so these are the kinds of things that people should know. Um, there's an archive that was found at a site called Kazir Ibrim. Kazir Ibrim on a modern map is the very southern part of Egypt, but in the medieval world, it was a part of Nubia. They found an archive in the 1970s, and they found documents in 8 different languages, meaning the Nubian archivists who put that archive together could read 8 different languages. The 8 different languages were Old Nubian, which was the indigenous language, Meroitic, which was the ancient indigenous language, Coptic, which was the Christian language, Greek Creole, which was halfway between Greek and Nubian, and then Arabic, Latin, Greek, and Turkish. 8 different languages. And this was in medieval Africa. And this is astounding because we were told our ancestors were all illiterate. That's what we were told. And so these are the kinds of things that I think people need to know. Similarly, in I don't know how it goes in America, but in England, we call bowls and dishes china. Is that the name you use?
yes.
Yeah, bowls and dishes are called china because bowls and dishes come from China. But many of us don't know that in the 15th and 16th centuries, condiments, salt cellars, and that kind of thing were coming from West Africa. And so during the time of people like Henry VIII in England and so on, a lot of them had salt cellars that were exquisitely carved of ivory. They're about this big, exquisitely carved of ivory with their wonderful decorations coming from West Africa, coming from Sierra Leone, coming from the Empire of Benin. Absolutely exquisite. They're some of the finest works of 15th and 16th century art. And that used to be, if you were a rich person, that's what you would have on your table. Again, nobody talks about this.